Today's guest speaker is the principal of one of our schools, one of the schools that our club has had a long-standing positive relationship with, Bailey Road School. The principal, Ray Kelly, entered the education sector in 2004 after having owned sports and recreation businesses and a video production company. Ray's married with 4 children and 13 grandchildren, and number 14 is on the way in September.
One more and I've got my rugby team.
Today Ray will talk with us about the changed demographics of Bailey Road School, the socio-economic circumstances of Bailey Road School families and how this has progressively changed over recent years. And as a result of that, the school underpins its daily curriculum with initiatives to build the students' self-confidence, their life skills, and preparing them to succeed and break the dependency cycles. So please welcome the principal of Bailey Road School, Ray Kelly.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, everybody. Excuse me if my throat's a bit croaky. I believe I've discovered the cure for COVID, which is to have a cold all the time, and then you can never catch COVID as well. Good morning. It's very nice to be here speaking with you. Let me explain what that means. They're leading students to become entrepreneurs for themselves. Really, it's about allowing students to see the power of setting goals for themselves, also the power of saving, and I also show groups of them, once they get a bit older, the power of compound interest. So those things together give students a different view of the world from the one they may, have as the normal thing they see when they're at home. So that's what I mean about entrepreneurs. Now, is it click forward? Next one, that way. Here we go. Okay, our school has 413 students at the moment. It fluctuates quite a lot. We find that we get a few students in, a few students out. So we never make big gains, except at the beginning of term 3 when we get an influx of new entrants. So we've got up to that number now, and this may be difficult to see, but approximately 25% of our school are Maori and 45% are Pacifica students, and then there are the smaller groups amongst those as well. That's been the way it is at Bailey Road School for quite a long time. That doesn't necessarily represent our area exactly, the geographic zone that we're in, because a number of the wealthier people that live in our zone don't go to our school. They choose to go somewhere else, as you can, because zoning means, in effect, you kind of have a choice if you can persuade your way into another school. So this is what our demographic looks like, and they're awesome children. Let's move on. This is what the school looks like if you look at it from an artistic perspective. I was once challenged because I believe in data. I believe data is an aspect of a student, and if you can't measure things, you can't manage them. So a teacher once said to me, do you focus too much on data? And I said, well, data is also art. So that's what art looks like from my perspective. I'm no artist. Then I'll explain what it is. So that's the school there, and each of those pins represents an ethnicity, the colours, and those on the left of those rows represent the boys, and those on the right of those rows represent the girls. There's no labels there that you can see, so you can't identify anyone, because I used to, at my previous school, do this with little pictures of all our students, which was wonderful. It looked way better than this, but every time a parent came into my office, they would say, why is my student there? And I would have to explain through the process. So this way, no one really understands it unless I talk to them about it. I'll go for a close-up. This is what a class looks like. So basically, what you're looking at there, the white pins are Maori students, and the yellow ones are Samoan, for example. The red ones are Tongan students, and that little cactus there is a Latin American student, and I was very happy to find a cactus to represent them. There's only 3. The little tags show the supports we're putting in place for our students in the school. So those purple ones show that those are ESOL students, so English is not necessarily the first language. More often than not in the New Zealand context, that means their parents' first language is not necessarily English. Often the students are English speakers, but not in an environment where they get to practice their reading and writing skills because mum and dad cannot support them at home. Therefore, even though English is in effect their first language, it's not as strongly supported as it might be for other children of the same age. So they're also in that group as well. The yellow students, that is a program we put in place. The school funds that, and partially through the support we get from Rotary and other groups. That's a literacy support teacher that we fund ourselves outside the funding that we get from the ministry. And we have 2 of those working with those students. The white colours there, those are reading recovery students that are undergoing a specific program for reading support. And then the orange and the green, that student there is a funded student, an OARS funded student, so they have special education needs. And the green tag you can see sticking out there is ministry support that student receives for literacy. So altogether, our staff and myself can at any time, without having to look in computers or open books or find this sort of information another way, can look at that and remind ourselves that that's where we are. And that's where currently what we do looks like. And then, for example, those students, the little outliers there, the red and the cactus and the little yellow one, they're new to our school and they haven't been assessed yet. So therefore, we haven't got them in any programs. But if I jump back to the previous slide, and you had really good eyes, you'd be able to see that some of the students are not working at expectation, yet they do not have a program that the school provides to support them. Why? Well, those programs are expensive and we can't afford them for everyone. So what we try to do is to select those that we feel will get the most effect the quickest from those programs, and then move on to other students as we can afford the time. In an ideal world, everybody would have support, everybody would be at expectation, but that's the reality of a school and the situation that we're in. So we have a maths support teacher as well, which is a blue tag. They start working with children from year 5 upwards. So, and this is a junior school classroom there.
What's the ladybird?
The ladybird is a Fijian student. Yeah. It's very hard to get pins for all of those different ethnicities, so I had to hunt far and wide. So,
where are the European students?
The European students are green. This one here is a European student. That one right there. And we've got about 30 in our school, 30 European students. Okay, so this is my understanding of school. There's a picture of me when I was a young lad. Obviously I had a lot of hair. I lived in a 3-bedroomed house. Mum and dad, brother and sister. I went to a school that looked pretty nice. I had, as I recall, I was thinking about this the other day, I had a Chinese friend, I had an Indian friend. I don't remember there being other Chinese boys ever, or other Indian boys, but I had those two. And I had some Maori friends once I got to intermediate and to college, but at primary school, the makeup of my area, which was Blockhouse Bay, was pretty much white children, largely, with very few other ethnicities. My thinking about school was, you know, as a person before I went into education was, well, that's kind of what it's like. It's places kids go and we learn, and there's no trouble, there's no fights, no one, you know, there's no disputes. At my house, I had breakfast every morning, had dinner at night, dad was home, came home from work, didn't hit mum, mum didn't hit dad. They argued sometimes, but never got further than that. Dad always had a job. Mum stayed at home and looked after the kids. And that to me seemed to be what the world was. But it's not the world for every child. And when I started teaching, I went to a school in Mount Roskill, and that was a Decile 6 school, an unusual school because it's the hub of immigration for Auckland, and I believe for New Zealand. So in effect, that school had the majority of the children were Indian or Chinese or Pakistani. All of their parents were very, very focused on education, very respectful of teachers, very respectful of the decisions that were made in school. And to me, it was almost the same as that, except that the children were different ethnicities. So it seemed, okay, well, this seems to be what it's like. The opportunity to work at Bailey Road School, because I'd always wanted to work at a lower decile school because I figured that's where you could make a difference. So I thought, yeah, that's what I want to do. So I applied for the position there and was fortunate enough to get it. And then I arrived at Bailey Road School. And I remember distinctly the first couple of weeks I was there, I was in my office trying to find where everything was still. But I heard my DP, Fia, Celesta, she was up in the office. It's just a short walk from my office. And it was the end of the day, and one of the children hadn't been picked up, and she was chatting to the child. And she was saying, so have you got shoes for school? Because I see you haven't got the black ones that we wear. And he said, no, I haven't got them. She said, hold on, I've got some. We keep a lot of stuff in our storeroom. She got the shoes. She said, what about a pencil case? Because I've got lots of pencil cases. And, oh no, I don't have a pencil case either. She gave her a pencil case as well. She said, what about some snacks? Would you like some snacks to bring to school? She said, yeah, that'd be good too. So we get from Countdown and other sorts of local businesses, those sorts of food packages. So we gave her a bunch of those things as well. Then she gave her a school jacket because she didn't have a jacket either. We get those supplied to us as well by the Variety Club. And finally, she gave her a shirt too, because we have lots of lost property that's just going to sit there if we don't manage it in that way as well. And I was like really touched. And when the little girl got picked up, I said to Fia, gosh, that was really awesome what you did. And she said, and Fia's a fairly staunch sort of character. She says, that's just what we do. That's the way it works around here. So I knew I was in a different environment. I'd been there a few weeks, but I knew, it wasn't just about teaching the kids. It's about a community that doesn't necessarily have what I had, and I had to change my mindset as to what occurs. So here's some of the reality for our children. They don't always come having eaten breakfast. When we have good attendance days, it can be up to 60 children that we give breakfast to. We have a group for our middle and senior school, and we have a group for our junior school as well. 80% of our whānau live in rented accommodation. Half of our school population actually transitions in and out of our zone, the school zone. So it's only half of our kids will go from year 1 to year 8. And sometimes we get them coming in and out back again. So that is difficult for the children to settle and establish themselves as learners, because different teachers, different friends, different negotiations for how they fit into schools makes it very difficult for them. And this is to do with work, and often in our particular area and in a lot of places around Auckland, because social housing is getting knocked down, people are being moved to other places, different communities they weren't involved in, and they're not coming back until the new housing is in place, if indeed they come back. So these sorts of social forces are also pressing in on our families as well. 70% of those families live in intergenerational households. We gather this data when we enrol children and talk to families. Often for cultural reasons they choose to do it because they like to live together in larger groups. But there's also financial benefits, obviously, in doing that as well. Up to date, at any one time, the most we've had is 4 families in emergency accommodation. This was particularly true during COVID. There was a lot of those sorts of issues going on. So 4 families at one time was the most we've had, but I think there's 1 at the moment, 1 living in emergency accommodation. Where are healthy school lunches? Ka ora ka ako. That's what one looks like. It's, as far as students are concerned, more towards the healthy than the flavoursome, but there are snacks that come with it sometimes as well, and a little fruit salad things and yogurts as well. But for a lot of our kids, that's their best meal that they're going to get today. And when the program was offered to us, I thought, well, gosh, probably not too many of our family will actually agree to it. We've only had 2 or 3 that say they don't want to be involved in the program. I mean, it's a free lunch, so who's going to say no to a free lunch? But I think a fair few of them are quite grateful for it happening, especially the ones that come for breakfast as well. We have a supply of snacks as well that we get from various generous groups that send us food, and we keep those in the classrooms to supply the morning teas that students might not have as well. So we make sure everybody eats during the day. This makes sense in a school because hungry children are not settled and they can be irritable. So feed them is a really good strategy from our perspective. A number of our students share beds. We hear about this because they talk to the teachers and the teachers tell us, in some cases sofas, and they don't always come well rested. Some of this, to be fair, is due to social media, and a lot of our older students spend far too much of their sleeping hours doing those sorts of things, and you could argue that that's their fault. There's also shift working parents who can't necessarily put the same sort of parental control on their children that maybe I would have insisted on if it was my kids doing it. A depressing number of our students experience family violence. One of our little new entrants, he's having a great difficulty settling in at school. When I met him, he gave me some real good old kicks on the shin. He's only a little guy, so it didn't hurt, but he was not happy to be there, and he has continued. It's been 2 or 3 weeks now, so he's continuing the settling in process. But my staff are really good at that sort of, quietly and gently inserting children into classrooms. So basically, he spends a lot of time with us, with a little bit of time in the classroom, and we extend that. Anyway, he was chatting to one of our DPs, and he said last night, Dad pulled Mum across the floor by the hair when they were having a big fight. I didn't see that when I was a kid, and I speculate not many of us would have seen that sort of thing when we were children. But our children see that, and it's really hurtful, to be honest. Sometimes it happens to them, sometimes it happens to their siblings, sometimes it happens to their parents. But they see it, and being children, we tend to hear about it as well. And some of those children, of course, because that's what they see as the way you resolve disputes and the way that you interact with people who disagree with you, they exhibit violence as well. And I was talking to Sylvia before, who's worked for the Ministry of Education. I'm sure she is well aware of issues with bullying and violence that can occur in schools. Little kids, yep, it's quite manageable, but it gets difficult because we're a full primary, they become quite large. And if we haven't solved that problem by the time they get to year 7 and 8, or in effect year 5, 6, 7 and 8, then we have a real problem that is difficult to manage. And our whole strategy is around solving the problem as soon as they enter school, and we're quite successful at it, to be fair. I haven't been there long enough to enjoy the fruits of that at year 8 yet. However, I'm sticking around because I want to get the benefit of it. Okay, takeaways are a common meal, very popular. Everyone loves takeaways. They're relatively cheap, so a lot of our kids eat far too many of them, and you don't need a working fridge or an oven for takeaways, so that's a good justification as well. Especially if you're moving around a bit, or if you got evicted the night before by your own family because you had a fight with your brother, and at 2 o'clock in the morning he got so angry he kicked you all out. That's a true story. We provide uniforms to all of our new entrants, and I think I've mentioned this to you before, because we figured we could give a little bit of help in that area. So we fund that ourselves, and we use as I mentioned, unclaimed lost property to provide, in the wintertime, jackets and things that some students haven't got anymore. There's a number of community organisations, yourselves amongst them, that support us. Variety Club and Kids Can, City Mission, Duffy Box and Homes, local businesses like Countdown that I've mentioned, but there are lots of others as well. Yummy Stickers, that's from Pack and Save, local sports clubs who donate old equipment. And of course, School Start First Impressions came and met with us after we heard their talk here, and they're going to start working with us later in the year. And their plan is to supply school bags full of little necessities that children might not otherwise get. For example, pencil cases and so forth, which is going to be really awesome once they start. But we can't possibly solve all of these problems, and the thing is, at best we're expected to do something about them, and at worst we're blamed because of problems. You know, teachers get a bit of stick, or maybe we feel we get a bit of stick, maybe we don't. But we feel responsible for a lot of this that happens in our schools. But the truth is, we were trained to be teachers and educators. We weren't trained to be social workers. We weren't trained to be community outreach people. although the school does have a Swiss counsellor, and that's a social worker in schools. All decile 4 schools and below have that, which is awesome. And they work with the families of our children in need. They have big caseloads. We also, and again, thanks to your funding, I think it was last year, if not the year before, we started getting a counsellor, an outside counsellor from the Pakuranga Counselling Service, who comes into our school every Wednesday, and she works with another group of students, initially traumatised by COVID, now just traumatised. So that works as well, and we fund that as much as we can now. So yeah, once you have it, you really can't lose it. So that's what we can continue to do with that. Shifting mindsets through capitalism. I love capitalism. I was in business for a long time. I'm big on pulling yourselves up by your bootstraps and getting on and working hard and reaping all those rewards. Then I thought to myself, hold on, my bootstraps also included the bank of mum and dad when I started out. They gave me some money, which I had to pay back, of course, but a lot of our kids don't have mum and dad to give them a little amount to start a business or to do those sorts of things. So what we try to do is show children, as I mentioned, to be entrepreneurs for themselves. We base everything around our heart values, which is be an honest person, try as hard as you can. Achievement is important. You should strive to achieve whatever your goals are, and they can be in sports and they can be in academic areas or whatever you like. However, we stress the academic areas actually support sport, because when you're an All Black, it's a good idea to know how much money you're earning and where it's going to, rather than a manager who might not be as honest as you are through your education. Respect is super important. That's at the cornerstone of everything, because the conflicts can be resolved through respectful interactions between students, whānau, and staff. And we stress that all the time. It is the key. And togetherness. Everyone's in this together. So what I do affects them, what they do affects us and each other. So, Banquer. This has been in the news a little bit, so you might have heard of it. It's run by Kiwi Bank. It's a banking system, full and complete, except we use pretend money. And we use this in the school. Every student has their own Banquer account, and they earn money by being in the class. We were thinking, okay, well, if you don't come to school, then we won't pay you. But children often aren't in control of whether they can come to school or not. So we pay them a salary, and then the class teachers have full power as to how they use that in an economic way. So, for example, you can pay rent on your desk, and you can pay for services in the classroom, and you can get extra money for services you provide. But it teaches them about having a bank account right from being very young children. And we have money, paper versions there for the very little guys, and I often go and sell them lollipops, and that's by auction. So a lollipop can be a very expensive thing, but if you've made a lot of money, you can get one. So that's across the whole school. And I introduced that when I arrived, because I was using it in my classroom at my previous school, because I couldn't get any more traction. The good thing about being a principal is suddenly you have some traction, and you can say, well, financial literacy is, I suspect, the most important thing you can teach young people, how money can work for them and what they can do with it. So it's a whole school-wide process. The student council, I give them money, they have a budget. It's $250 a term, and there's a different student council, and they get to decide what they can spend it on. And I tell them, you can buy ice blocks if you want to. You can buy anything you want. You decide whether you want to buy it for the benefit of a one-off lick of an ice block on a Friday, or do you want something that will be more enduring? So 2 student councils so far. One bought plants to beautify the front of the school, and the other bought balls which they donated to the school, which is exactly the sort of thing I want them to decide to do, and exactly the sort of thing we talk about for 10 weeks before they make that decision. So although I say ice blocks, if it's worked, they will make these better decisions by the time it comes to spend the money. Then I have my beloved Entrepreneurs Club. We talk, there's 10 of them, and I also look around the school. I asked another student yesterday to join, because we have this shop called the 50 cents experience. All product is 50 cents, and they save the product. One of the students on Wednesday, we do it Wednesdays, she bought probably $40 worth of stuff. And I said, what are you doing? I mean, are you going to give it away? I said, sort of. And then she sold it to kids outside their shop. And then after that I said, you should be in our group, because that's really good thinking. I think she didn't sell it for more than 10 cents more than what we were selling it for, but entrepreneurial thinking, good into that. Her lines were shorter than our lines, so makes sense, why not? What these guys do is we thought, well, how much money, does everyone have a bank account? I said, most of them not, so we're arranging that. I said, what about savings? Does anyone save? Not really. Well, what can we do about that? Who has a job? Nobody. Right, well, let's think of a way to have a job. So we, in effect, opened a shop, and business is booming. We made $300 the other day. This is from just 50-cent coins. And of course, that student who bought $40 worth of product, bless their heart. But the idea, though, is we invest that. So once we get to $1,000, and we're at $800 now that we're clear, we will invest that. And by the end of the year, they get to decide, do they want to sell their investment, or do they want to continue to invest it? So, in effect, we're a little investment group. And by the end of the year, I think we should have $2,000, maybe $3,000 worth of funds to invest. All of the parents, of course, are informed. They all know what we're doing, and things are going smoothly. So we're just looking for an investment opportunity shortly. The next thing we're big on, and am I going fine for time? I know I...
Another 10.
Cool, okay. Experiences. Being an entrepreneur for yourself is not just about understanding money and the opportunities that you might have if you are good at saving and goal setting, but it's also about the experiences that you might not otherwise have had. So we are very big on making sure that you can go and see a ballet, you can go and see the theatre and the orchestra. We're very fortunate because a lot of these organisations have free versions for students of low decile schools, so we can actually go, except for a bus fare, we can go to those, which we do. Chess tournaments, camps, anything that they might not otherwise have experienced, we try to give them as much experience as possible. I think primary school is very much about giving you a taste of as many things as we can, and then when you get to college, you can start thinking, well, I liked that, the acting, that theatre thing was pretty good, I'd like to have a go. So that's what we try to do. Even things that, after ballet, it was, to be fair, a mixed response. Not everybody's cup of tea, but it was good that they saw it. Obviously, in a school with such diversity, we value our language and culture. So there's hardly a week goes by without some sort of cultural activity or language celebration. We do things like those fun days there. That's me in my normal weekend clothes that I wear. So we're giving, again, students opportunities to do and celebrate who they are, so that they, again, as entrepreneurs for themselves, gain a respect and also gain the respect of others, because everyone brings something valuable to a school, regardless of whether you can speak English or not. It doesn't make any difference. It's about the things you can bring to school. At my previous school, I had a boy who joined my class from China. His name was Harbour, couldn't speak a word of English. So of course, well, oh gosh, poor boy, we're going to have to help him all the way through. The thing with Harbour, though, is when his mother came in and she interpreted for competition for a 10-year-old boy in China, 9 million students, he won it. That's the sort of misconception you can have by language being something that says, I'm going to have to do a lot of work with you. Here's a genius, in effect. He didn't stay in our school very long because we can't help geniuses like that. They need to go to schools that are better resourced for that sort of thing. But that's just the sort of misconceptions you can have. So everybody brings something. Shifting mindsets. We try to involve our community as much as possible, and it's been a very frustrating 2 years, as you can imagine, because we have found it hard to bring people on site. We're just starting to do that now. We conduct reading nights and parent upskilling, STEAM holiday programs, that's science, technology, engineering, art and maths combined together, and We have holiday programs for that, maths holiday programs. We don't have a Pacifica, we just had board elections. You may not be aware, it wasn't a very well advertised thing, but we didn't have a Pacifica person elected to our board, so we're co-opting one because it's important that community has a voice as well. We have dual language books, we have Duffy books, which we give to families who, believe it or not, they don't have books, they don't even have one. So the Duffy book is their library, the beginning of their library. You become an entrepreneur for yourself because we'll start you off on the road to, this is good to have, let's get 2, and then 5, and then 10. Whānau are always grateful for unexpected help. We give away food parcels and those sorts of things, and we select our whānau. My DPs are experts in our community. They know everybody's situation. They know what families have lost family members and those sorts of things, and we provide them with food parcels and other help. For example, someone's mother died yesterday, so immediately we're on the case, so we visit, we take the parcel, and we offer our help going forward. That happens to everybody, of course, but that's the way we support. So there's some of the sort of activities that we carry on with STEAM and maths. Okay, so I look at this as profit and loss. I can't help it. I was in business, I think of it all the time, but not money. It's our profit and loss comes with high attendance, then I'm making a profit. High achievement rates, I'm making a profit. Positive feedback from our students when they tell us, through the ways we question them, that they're feeling safe and comfortable and able to learn at school, we're making a profit. When our community gives us positive feedback, that's profit for a school, all of those things. Do we face challenges? Yep, every day. Every single day something happens that was unexpected and disappointing. So what do? So we're looking for excellence all the time. When it doesn't happen, we adapt and try to make the changes necessary so that those things don't happen again. And I have to say we're getting good at it. Our school is quite a bit different from when I started, and that's not necessarily me. We've got really good staff. My job is to move them in the directions they want to move and to resource them so that they can achieve those things.
Maybe 2 minutes then.
I'm done now.
You're done?
Thank you very much, everyone.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
Ray, have you identified a significant change in attitude in the school?
In staff, students? Yeah, well, I look at them in groups. There's the group that I've been involved in the whole time, so they're now getting into year 4, and we have a much calmer and respectful group there because we've really put a lot of resourcing and effort into making sure when any behaviour that looks like it would become, significantly harder to deal with later, we resource that. So they go into programs, they have additional support. So changing there most certainly. In the other parts of the school, we have programs now where we very quickly deal with issues. For example, I'm always in the playground, morning tea and lunchtime. I look for issues, and I only look for 6 or 7 students because they're the ones who cause them, and then we preempt any issues and we grab them out. There will never be a complete change though, because some of these kids have no other understanding except being a bit violent. However, it's a different school than 3 years ago. I was shocked and surprised at how many fights and disputes there were at lunchtime. I came from a school where we'd have one every 3 weeks and someone would have said something to someone. That would have been it. But this was full on. But now it's considerably less because we work hard at it.
Yes,
Question?
Yeah, the wraparound that you, or the extra support that you give to some students and then are not able to cover right across. Now, it's always all about money, but is that a time thing as being a major aspect of that, or is it straight money?
If you get it at the right time, again, if you get a 5-year-old and modify their behaviour before they get too old, then we can cure a lot of those problems. On the balance sheet, it doesn't cost us as much to do that if we're trying to police something in older years, because it's more difficult there. So that's how I try to put the funding all into the most effective bang for our buck, if you like. There are things that just work. You know, if you are loving and nurturing to children who are traumatized, then they will eventually come right, and I've seen it again and again. And in some children, there's no chance are we going to change this behaviour. He is really difficult, but I'm wrong. They do, because my DPs have a consistent nurturing approach that works. But that is time, because they're not doing something else when they are doing that. And it's just resourcing is such an important part of getting those things right. The ministry could give us $1 million, and that's still not enough. So I don't ask for any more money. And when I hear principals complaining about, no, look at your systems and get the best out of the systems that you have. Otherwise, you're just never going to make a difference. All you're going to do is complain about not being able to make a difference, in my opinion. Many would disagree.
First of all, it looks to be such a fabulous sort of thing you've got going here. It's just
Thank you.
amazing. How many other schools, in your personal opinion, would be taking a similar approach?
That specific approach, the entrepreneurial sort of thing?
In general, taking that sort of roundabout.
Only from what I know, half a dozen, maybe.
I feared you'd say that.
Yeah.
Half a dozen nationally?
I don't know nationally, but locally, half a dozen, that sort of idea. But that's not to say there aren't really good programs going on in schools that take a different focus and a different way of looking at the issues. And I was speaking to Karen before, there's no longitudinal evidence for this. So therefore, if I went to you as another principal and I said, I've got this good idea, you'd say, well, so do I. I've got my own good ideas. So when you have evidence, when you have a body of evidence, and there's a university in the United States called the Georgia State University. They have an initiative. They saw some 15 to 20 years ago that their ethnic students were enrolling, but they were not graduating. And they said, why is this happening? So they said, let's go back to the source and find out what are the reasons. There are over 250 reasons that students didn't graduate. They didn't have part-time jobs. They didn't have safe accommodation. They weren't able to access or purchase all of the books they have. I have the same view for a primary school. We try to find out all the things that stop you leaving our school at the level or above, because we aim for above, at year 8 when you go to college, and we try to fix them as 5-year-olds. And that's what all those little tags are. We've identified things that work and don't work. So the don't works, we stop, but the works, we emphasise and continue on. Can I take the opportunity to say thank you guys for the support that you do give our school? I personally am embarrassed when I come to receive these things, because I think schools should be able to manage themselves for everything they need, but the support of community organisations is, unfortunately, a fact that really helps us. So the work that you do is, thank you, we just appreciate the Duffy Books thing, awesome, golly, thank you.